Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Crimes Amendment Bill. Over the course of the time that we've had this debate in the House, it has been rigorous debate, and we have debated the merits of this bill, Mr Speaker. Labor, of course, supports any measure to prevent and mitigate the harm or abuse against children. However, we have reservations with certain provisions and their ability to be effective in combating the actual problem. And I'm not going to go on too long, Mr Speaker. I'm just going to point them out very briefly because I feel that my colleague Rajan has done a good job of discussing it, and we discussed it fully yesterday when we were debating it. Firstly, Mr Speaker, the lack of urgency demonstrated by the National Government with respect to child abuse and family violence is of concern to this side of the House. They put up legislation like this and act as though they are taking it seriously, but we know that they are not, that it's not being pushed through an urgency like some of the other legislation that really shouldn't have been urgent at all, things like the Fire at Will bill. Mr Speaker, that domestic violence bill, I will say it over and over again, continues to languish at the bottom of the order paper, despite the fact that it was widely consulted upon and the sector is waiting for this government to implement it. So the lack of urgency demonstrated by the National Government with respect to child abuse and family violence is concerning to us. Secondly, the National Government's continual emphasis on the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff approach, which is really, Mr Speaker, although we are supporting this bill, what this is, it's after the fact. It's not going to stop a child getting abused. It's about after it's occurred, Mr Speaker. We've heard from this side of the House and many speakers talk about the correlation between poverty and abuse, and we've seen nothing from the National Government that responds to the poverty that we as a country are facing. And so if that is not addressed, Mr Speaker, how can we possibly pretend that we will be addressing the issue of abuse at all? And thirdly, Mr Speaker, the issue that was raised by my colleague Charles Chauvel last week, which was the proposed modification of the defence of claim of right. And he discussed that in full last night. Those are the reservations that we have. Although we support this bill, I think it's very important that we have those noted down. Thank you very much, Mr Speaker.
Te ora Flavel.
So as we approach the close of Parliament, the heat and speed increases as the government rushes to push particular priorities through. This is one area, proposals to further protect children from assault, neglect, ill treatment, and that has been put on a faster track than I think was originally intended. And while we have not supported, the Māori Party I'm talking about has not supported much of the justice-driven agenda of this government, we do support the concept of creating a new offence influenced by the failure to protect the child or vulnerable adult from the risk of death, grievous bodily harm or sexual assault as a consequence of the unlawful act by a third party. So this is about failure of legal duty, taking reasonable steps to protect a child or vulnerable adult, knowing that they were at risk. And I'd have to say it's good that this bill isn't just about those in the household, but more broadly a staff member of a hospital, an institution, or residence where the victim lives. The thing we should all realise is that violence is not colour-blind, class-specific in any way, or confined to any suburbs or any particular population. We must be broad in our thinking, and we must universally condemn any attacks made on our most precious tamariki, our children. Mr Speaker, the Māori Party supports the prevention of ill treatment, neglect and violence against our tamariki and those who are vulnerable, including those who are in care because of mental incapacity, those sorts of things. So in one of the speeches that I did earlier, I raised the importance to recognise the need for a defence when the adult accused of failure to protect is a battered woman, and also our concern that criminalisation and increased penalties are used as a means of addressing serious social ills. These are expensive responses with no evidence to show that they work, but we are in a no-win situation in this particular bill when the health and safety of our tamariki is at stake. And in that regard, the Māori Party supports absolutely this bill.
Katrina Shanks.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.